Yeah, so thank you so much. So now we will begin the last session of today. I think this is last but not least session. The presenter is Poomsiri Dumrongvute and Thitinant Tengaumnuay from Chulalongkorn Universities and Professor Takuma Kumashiro from Kobe University will once again play his role as a commentator. You remember his nice presentation from former session. It looks like he's doing two jobs today. So this is an honor to chair the session 6, and the two professors from Chulalongkorn University will talk about Thailand ESG evolution. So without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Chung. Just one note before starting our presentation, our title of the paper has been changed from the previous one to be ESG disclosure and greenwashing in Thailand. As you can see from the slides over there, there are two authors of this paper. So the presentation will start from me, and then Poomsiri will discuss more about the problems of ESG disclosure in Thailand. So I will give the brief overview of ESG developments in Thailand first. So one thing to be noted before the presentation is that our paper is still needs further developments and revision. So all your comments and questions are welcomed, and we are grateful to all helpful comments to develop our paper further. Okay, so first start from giving the brief overview of greenwashing. Actually, I think everyone knows what greenwashing is, but just to give a brief overview of what it is. So greenwashing is generally the situation where a company overstates their business performance to be environmentally green, while actually they are not. Or they might highlight their positive aspect of business operation, but omit the harmful impacts of the business operation. So it means that they provide a misleading information, and that can disrupt a level playing field in terms that it might discourage the business that genuinely commit to sustainability. They can get some advantages which they are not supposed to get, but they can get those advantages from claiming that they are green. They can get some market access, or they can get some market shares. They can attract some environmentally concerned clients or consumers. And also another issue is that they can the greenwashing situation can undermine the confidence in ESG investments. So no matter how the policies have been launched to incentivize the environmentally behaviors of the business, or no matter how much the government try to incentivize the sustainability, as long as the greenwashing still exists, it might discourage or undermine the confidence in ESG investments. Then how to address the greenwashing? So I think you have learned some from the presentation of Professor Takuma Kumashiro, that in most countries with developed economies, they have established the regulatory framework to address greenwashing. And because greenwashing is about the business behavior of claiming that they are green while they are not. So actually it's about the false claim. It's about the false saying that they are green. So generally the measures for handling this problem is, for example, mandatory sustainability reporting in terms of disclosure to ensure that the transparency can be found, and the company cannot simply say that they are green if they are not. The disclosure can allow the public investigation and public monitoring. Also, the independent audits can help in verification to ensure that all the information provided to the consumers that they are green, that those companies are green, are actually is. And also the enforcement, the sanctions for those who are greenwashing themselves. there can be the legal, the penalties, the criminal penalties for false claims. So those are the examples of measures for addressing greenwashing. And you can see that in other areas, in other regions, for example, the EU, they have introduced a directive to address the greenwashing by requiring the ESG disclosure, as well as the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's SEC proposed rule on climate-related disclosures. So you can see that ESG disclosure or sustainability disclosures have been applied as a key tool to prevent greenwashing, to ensure that the transparency can be established, and then the watchdog oversight mechanisms can work to prevent the taking advantages of disclosure. So I will give the brief overview of the standards that have been launched. The GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. This is the guideline for the companies to give the information about their sustainability performance, like the carbon emissions, the biodiversity impact, or the labor practices. So all the ESG issues. Apart from that, there are also the SASB. This guideline is kind of industry specific. And then also the TCFD. So this guideline is to handle with the climate related risk specifically. So these are the examples as right now, the measures that have been used globally is disclosure to ensure that the public can investigate, can monitor the greenwashing. So the key point is that apart from the disclosure requirements, it's also the standardization. The frameworks or the guidelines provide standardized required information that a company can use to claim that they have green performance. And with this standardized information, the stakeholders or the investors can compare, can analyze, can assess the performance of such company. And that can help in reducing the discrepancy in ESG disclosure and ensure the transparency can be established. Also, as Professor Takuma has mentioned in his presentation, that the ex-ante enforcement mechanisms can also include the independent third-party verification, and then the ex-post mechanism also includes the regulatory oversight. And in most jurisdictions, for example, the Australia, they have the ASIC, which takes the enforcement against the companies which makes a false claim. So you can see that in some countries where they have established the framework for addressing greenwashing, the procedural requirements are the key measures, especially the disclosure requirement, which ensures the transparency. And also the the establishment of the third-party verification and the oversight to make sure that any violation, any non-compliance will get sanctions. But in Thailand right now, we have only the law. I will walk you through the developments of Thailand ESG disclosures. The key environmental acts in Thailand is an enhancement in the conservation of national environmental acts in 1992. This law is generally handled with set the quality of the environment, like environmental qualities, and also provide set the requirements for EIA, the environmental impact assessment. There is no requirement for disclosure. So there's no sets of transparency of information disclosure at all. Even though we have the toxic substance control in 1992, which requires the company to report their possession or the transfer of toxic substance, but those reports are submitted to the Department of Industries. It's not the requirement for public disclosure. So generally in Thailand, we don't have any legal mandatory requirements for environmental disclosure that includes ESG disclosures. It's until mid-2010s that the ESG regulations has been introduced in Thailand, and that is due to the global trend, the pressure from the global market. It starts from the Thai Security Exchange Commission that require the ESG disclosure requirements. But for these requirements, they don't provide any legal sanctions for non-compliance. They only require the listed companies to give the reasons why they cannot comply to the guidelines. Also, the Bank of Thailand. The Bank of Thailand is more active in moving towards SDG, in moving towards green finance. They have officially launched their policies to adopt the ideas or the concept of green finance and to encourage the financial institutions, including commercial banks, to incorporate environmental aspects into their decisions whether to give loan to the clients, to ensure that the ESG issues will be taken into consideration, and also set the Thailand's taxonomy for categorizing the company, the environmentally risk business. So you can see that in Thailand right now we don't have any mandatory requirement for disclosure, just voluntary. Or even though the stock exchange set the guidelines, but there are no sanctions for non-compliance. Now we move to Poomsiri, who discuss more the problems of ESG disclosure in Thailand.
Thank you. I actually told her to spend the most time, so I have less time for my presentations. And I actually intentionally saved this presentation for today because we have Thai regulator yesterday, and they painted a very rosy picture of Thai ESG, right? But as Thitinant had just laid out the groundwork and the framework that we have today, there's so many lacking, right? So we saved this for today. But once we finish our paper, we publish, I will definitely give them the link to our paper. So I just gonna talk about the problem about the ESG disclosure in Thailand, right? It need the system to work first, right? We appear to be green, so we need someone to catch who just appear to be green but not really green, right? But we found out that the framework, the groundwork is still lacking. The first lacking is the lack of functional regulatory framework, right? As you listen to the speaker yesterday, they talk about disclosures, but the disclosure that we have right now is all voluntary. We don't have mandatory disclosure at all, right? The second lack is the lack of legal responsibility for the company and the board of directors. I have to say that our company law is quite old. The company law is actually in the Civil and Commercial Code. We don't have like Company Act, we just have Public Company Act and Security and Exchange Act separately. So these only govern public company, but not all company, right? And since we don't have the basic legal framework setting up for the company, it's just hard to make the company and the director responsible. One of the examples is that the piercing corporate view doesn't really work in Thailand. We only have one evidence of the Consumer Case Procedure Act, right? Only protecting the consumer, right? That in that case, if something wrong with the consumer can make the company and the director responsible. But outside of that, we don't have anything, right? We don't have the court decisions, we don't have the law backing up piercing corporate view. So this is one of the major problems as well. The next problem is the lack of standardized metrics for ESG, right? They talk about so many metrics, so many index that they're gonna use. The GRI, a lot of things, but we don't have official endorsement of any metrics, right? So it's become confused. Sometimes maybe the Stock Exchange of Thailand will talking a lot about one metrics, but the SEC will talk about the other metrics. And then the Bank of Thailand might use the other metrics. So this becomes the problem of the company as well, that they have to maybe comply with all the metrics. Sometimes they might find some discrepancy in that itself. And the next problem is the statutory gap. I think Thitinant might talk about this better than me because she is the criminal law professor. But we don't have the specific legislation that criminalize or penalize false or misleading disclosure about ESG. We only penalize misleading disclosure for traditional disclosure. If you falsify your financial statement, this will be penalized. But if you talk about ESG, you falsify information about ESG, this won't get any penalty at all, at least directly. Then the other one that is very important, and I found this one to be one of the most important factors, especially for Thailand and maybe for a lot of countries in the global south as well, is that the Thailand market has a very limited market force for ESG. We are aware of the ESG. 95% of Thai consumers acknowledge that they want to be green, right? They acknowledge that, okay, there's climate change, there's problem about our social, problem about the governance. But actually from that 95%, only 55% actually choose ESG or sustainable product, right? They aware, but they don't choose it. And only 11.7% willing to pay more for ESG product. So it doesn't translate into purchasing power. That's a problem as well. And also 86% of Thai consumers want to be responsible for concerns such as waste management, recycling program, renewable energies. But only 39% of that consumer believe that their own action as an individual can actually have some positive impact or effect on the country as a whole. So these become the challenge, right? And this become the framework that might suggest that if we just import the disclosure regime from the West, from the global North, it might not actually work within the legal framework and socio-economic status of country like Thailand. But I find this not only to be the challenge, it can be opportunity for us to think about how to make it work within our limited resource and our existing framework that we have. So that might be the development of our paper in the futures. But for all these reasons, right, we want to address that the current disclosure regime for ESG might not really work in all jurisdictions. And we might not be able to directly 100% or mostly adopt those frameworks. We need to do some fine-tune adjustment for the local context. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Thitinant and Poomsiri, for the very, very inspiring and exciting presentation. It reminds me of the article from 1996 by Bernard Black and Rainer Krugman, when they wrote an article about a self-enforcing model of corporate law, especially in the emerging countries when you don't have a real market and the court is not really active in solving conflict issues, then maybe building up a self-enforcing model of a law is really important to make the corporate governance and protection of investor work. And I can see that here, even though the disclosure mechanism could be are considered something like a savior to the current ESG discussion, but as our two presentators explained, due to the lack of interest in the market, maybe that cannot be the ideal solution in the emerging economies like Thailand. So thank you once again. It was really, really a thoughtful presentation. Yep. So now let's move to our commentators. So, Professor Kumashiro, please.
Thank you for introducing me. Poomsiri and Thitinant, thank you for sharing your thoughtful, provoking draft and for your clear and engaging presentation. I'm privileged to comment on your insightful work. Like other commentators, I would normally begin by highlighting the importance of your research question and outlining the broader context in which it is situated. However, I believe the necessity of addressing greenwashing has already been sufficiently acknowledged in this conference room, so I will skip that part. Instead, my comments will focus on your paper's contribution to the academic discussion on ESG disclosure, and I'd like to raise 2 or 3 questions to enhance my understanding of your arguments. This paper offers some key contribution to the academic discussion on ESG disclosure. First, this paper makes a valuable contribution to ESG scholarship by focusing on the practical, legal, and institutional challenges of enforcing ESG disclosure in Thailand. In contrast to many existing studies that concentrate on developed countries such as the EU, United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, this paper offers a perspective from a developing country, bringing to light insight that are often missing from current discussions. Most developed economies have, to varying degrees, established legal frameworks to address misrepresentation in disclosure, and also benefit from a certain level of public institutional investor awareness of ESG issues, particularly on environmental matters. The paper I presented earlier in Japan similarly presupposed the existence of some baseline legal infrastructure to prevent misstatement, as well as a basic level of the social and investor interest in ESG. However, as your paper indicated, the case of Thailand examined in this study clearly shows that such assumptions do not necessarily hold on in many developing countries. Nevertheless, these countries are increasingly being pushed to respond to growing international expectation for ESG disclosure, often without the support of strong domestic enforcement mechanisms or widespread social engagement with ESG concerns. In this regard, this paper clearly illustrates the unique position of a developing country like Thailand, and that is one of its key strengths of this paper. Second, this paper reminds us that relying only on disclosure-based mechanism is not sufficient to promote meaningful corporate engagement with ESG issues. In many jurisdictions, direct regulatory interventions that impose obligation on companies to address ESG matters are politically difficult to achieve. As a result, policymakers often prefer to use mandatory disclosure as a less instructive alternative. While similar arguments have been made in relation to developed countries, this paper demonstrates that such limitations apply equally in developing contexts like Thailand. In such setting, disclosure rules often fail to operate effectively in practice due to weak enforcement or limited investor pressure and low levels of public awareness. Thirdly, the paper applies the concept of greenwashing to Thailand, showing how companies make vague or misleading ESG claims in environmental or where there is little risk of punishment. While greenwashing is frequently studied in Europe and North America, this paper expands the discussion by connecting the phenomenon not only to legal deficiencies, but also to broader and social and economic factors. First, the paper do not treat greenwashing as a purely legal issue. It also how low public environmental awareness, limited media scrutiny, and weak civil society engagement make it more difficult to hold companies accountable. This multidimensional approach makes the analysis especially realistic and relevant for other countries in any other Asia countries. And fifth, the paper provides concrete case studies of greenwashing in Thailand, along with the lack of enforcement responses. While examples of greenwashing in developed economics have become widely known, well documented, this study contributes by showing that greenwashing looks like in developing country setting areas have received relatively little attention so far. And sixth, and finally, this paper presents a constructive set of solutions to address the problem of greenwashing in developing countries. The recommendation, this paper's recommendation, such as establishing clear legal accountability for directors and officers, creating a dedicated regulator body or a task force on ESG issues, requiring third-party assurance, and raising awareness among consumers and investors about the risk of greenwashing, are all closely aligned with the problems identified in Thailand context. Notably, many of these proposals are not unique to Thailand. The need to clarify the legal duties of corporate directors and officers to mandate third-party assurance is widely discussed in advanced and other jurisdictions as well. What this paper shows is that these reforms are not only relevant for European countries and the North American countries, but also meaningful and applicable in countries like Thailand. At the same time, the paper highlights an important issue often overlooked in European countries and United States, the role of public education. In many developed countries, environmental awareness was shaped by serious pollution crisis from the 1970s to the 1990s, forming a social and cultural foundation for today's ESG expectation. However, in rapidly developing economics, or where such shared historical experience or awareness may not yet exist, and where the pressure for the economic growth remains intense, achieving both development and environmental responsibility poses a much complex challenge. Well, the paper okay, and I find this paper to be an excellent and timely contribution. And I'd like to ask three questions to help clarify my understanding. First, I'd like to ask about the how degree generalized of the greenwashing problem described in Thailand. The paper clearly illustrates the unique challenges Thailand faces. However, it's not entirely clear to what extent these findings and insights are applicable to other countries, especially other developing countries. Could you clarify whether you see the Thai case as broadly representative of ESG disclosure challenges in developing countries, particularly in Asian regions, or whether there are more country-specific dynamics at play? Second, I'd like to ask about the domestic drivers of ESG disclosures in Thailand. From your analysis, it seems that investors, customers, and general public in Thailand may not yet exhibit strong interest in environmental or broader ESG issues. If that is the case, it seems there may be relatively few domestic actors demanding ESG disclosures. Given that, why is ESG disclosure is being pursued, and why does your paper advocate for strengthening enforcement against greenwashing? is it primarily driven by international pressure or market access concerns? Third, related to your proposal solutions, your paper suggests establishing a dedicated regulatory body or a task force to address ESG issues. This would presumably require public funding. It's based on the funding of the taxpayers. Given the relatively low level of public concern about environmental issues, as you mentioned, do you think there's enough public support or political will to justify such spending? Or how might such funding be legitimated in the current Thai context? I imagine this ties in closely with the need for public education and awareness building among investors and consumers, but I'd appreciate your view on this point. And thank you, lastly, thank you for your insightful papers and presentations.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, Thitinant and Poomsiri, would you like to answer and maybe comments to the comments, and then afterwards we can open questions to the floor.
Hi, so actually you give us like 3 questions. So to answer the first question, like to what extent Thai cases can provide example for Asia, I would say that Thailand cannot represent all Asian countries, because in Asia, you know, like we have developed and developing countries and developing economies like Japan, so or Singapore. So they are different, but we raise Thailand as an example where the developing countries, the people, the public, paid more attention to the price of the goods rather than environmentally concerned. So even though you can see from the polls that Poomsiri raised before, that even though Thai people say that they are aware of environmental problems there, at least they believe that climate change is real, but they are not that active to these issues. And this can link to the second question, that what about like other drivers for ESG disclosure? So Poomsiri will talk more about this, but I would say that for the activism, the environmental activisms in Thailand, I would say that actually they are more on the specific area, like the dam construction or the pollution, rather than the ESG disclosure, because other problems are more outstanding. And of course, the political situations in Thailand is quite, you can see it's quite unstable. So generally, environmental problems have been raised, and an example of the abuse of power. ESG disclosure, which generally linked to the greenwashing, is not the focus of the civil society or environmental activism in Thailand. And you can see there are most movements, most civil actors. They focus on political instability, democratic establishment, and also the economic policies rather than ESG disclosures. I would say that the players which have significant roles in encouraging the ESG disclosure are from the private sectors, especially the big companies that they want to get market access in other countries, in other regions. So they have to follow the standards, the international standards, and that is voluntary. But you can see that that means just a limited number of companies that will follow the ESG standards, the ESG disclosure standards, not all, and it might disrupt in the long term, disrupt the scheme for preventing greenwashing in the long term. Okay, so I'm moving to Paul.
I think I want to add on to that. I think to add on for the first question, I think it's a very constructive idea, and I will consider as well to draw example from some other developing countries that might have the same problem. This will show how we have like common things. Even every country would be a unique country, right? But if we draw a lot of example of the same problem, we can show something in common. And for the second question as well, I think Thitinant also mentioned that, but I would like to add on that. I think, yeah, I also agree that we need to talk more about the international pressure in our paper, right? And I think international pressure can come from many fronts, right? Sometimes it's from the regulator side. The regulator just feel pressure that they really to comply with the international standard to make them look good or to make them help them to become a member of some organizations. And also it can come from the private entity as well, that they want to trade, they want to do some project together with some other company in different countries. So they have to have the same standard as well. So we will definitely consider adding that to our paper as well. And I think, did you address the...
Okay, so for the third question about the public support, whether there are any public support, I would say that, as I earlier mentioned, that most public, I would say the watchdog, they focus more on other problems, because this can raise an example of how the developing countries like us are facing the problems on raising their standards or raising the measures to make sure that we can have the disclosure function effectively to address greenwashing when the public might not pay much attention to or much interest into this issue.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Then we'll open to the floor. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Yep, please.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. It seems clear. I think there are some common problems everywhere. My question is simple. I think in your presentation, you seem to indicate that we need to have a lot of sticks, right? Liability enforcement to make sure people say the right thing. But for another dimension is the problem of greenwashing, is it because of the inadequate questions as in disclosure rules? So I explain reasons. I study Taiwan used to have voluntary disclosure for carbon emission by listed companies. So it was voluntary until like 2022, 2023-ish. And I examined all their reports, and I realized that even for top companies, they basically just bluff. For example, one of the questions I require company to answer is how much you spend in your budget for carbon emission. Then that's the question is as simple as that. And you see all sorts of questions to say, you spend like 1%, 10%, several million. And the problem is that no one actually knows whether they spend that money in the next year. Nobody cares. So that comes back to my question is, what do you think in Thailand's problem, based on how you evaluate about the rules, is the greenwashing the problem because the question is obscure enough that actually induce people to basically bluffing? Yeah, that's my idea. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe shall we?
So just two quick points and a question. My sense is, in some respects, you may be giving developed countries too much credit. Yeah, your statistics about how many percentage of people believe in climate change in Thailand, I suspect it's higher than the United States, to be quite honest. I suspect a lower percentage of people. You had 95%. There's a lot of climate change deniers in the US, but that's more just of an aside. As a more serious note, I was talking to Professor Matsui on the break, and this is more her idea than mine, but if you stamp out greenwashing, maybe you have to be careful what you wish for. And I hope I'm not right about this, but Professor Matsui was talking to me about how the Japanese, of course, lend a lot of money to Indonesia these days, Japanese banks, and I suspect there's also loans that come to Thailand. And if you up the level of disclosure in a very serious way, and they have to report back, is this going to cause problems for investment in Thailand? In other words, is Thailand doing this out of sort of an incompetence, or do they know what they're doing? That you have these standards, but you don't pick one, and companies, big multinationals, feel happy to invest because they know they're not going to be called out. But you can still sort of say you comply with the standard, right? Again, I hope I'm not right about this, but that seems fairly plausible. And if you were to stamp out greenwashing and go to some standard, especially in today's world when it seems like the Trump era, these things may be rolled back everywhere. Could Thailand be hurting itself by doing this? I say that as somebody who thinks that the environment is a problem.
Yeah, okay.
Much. My question is about the prerequisite facts rather than the some theoretical questions, because the interesting point of your presentation was that you were talking about bank taxonomy and consumer pressure rather than the investor attention or something like that. So my idea was that the companies that seek finance overseas in other countries is following the disclosure standard voluntarily. In contrast, the domestic countries, domestic companies who are financing the money in domestic bank or market is not stated in that kind of presentation. So, who is the main domestic finance supplier? Is it bank or market? And if the market pressure is significant, who is the powerful investor in Thailand? And how many big countries are seeking funds outside the country? And so that's my basic question. I'm sorry.
Okay, then why don't you stop here gathering questions and you answer the 3 questions?
Okay, so I think I will respond the first 2 questions together. I totally understand that I'm like a law professor working on my laptop, so it's not totally reality that I can know of this, and I really agree with that. But I had a chance to work on a project with the Security and Exchange Commissions of Thailand as well. What I really found from my work with the SEC was that they only have blank sections for ESG disclosure, and they basically saying that, okay, you can report whatever you do for ESG, right? So the result is that big company, right? Sometimes they're trying to be green and doing a lot of things that is very nice. So they put a lot of things. They're trying to compare themselves with the metrics and everything as well, very advanced. And also for the small company or even some big company that doesn't really care about ESG, they just put their CSR page on that blank sections. So it's really wide range of things that people put in there. I found that this is not a good signal for the public, for the investor and the consumer as well. I think that even company that put a lot of good things, trying to write this section really well, there is no one catching them. And for people who put nothing on there, they actually can be better. They actually can do better, show themselves better. And once they trying to show a greener solution that they put in their company, it also encourage them to do better actually in practice. So I think if they have more substantial questions or substantial things that tell people to disclose, it will be better than what we have right now. And together with the 3rd questions, I think we have a lot of players that can influence the ESG landscape in Thailand. But one thing that we recently have was the Thai ESG fund. We have this the system where if you invest in the Thai ESG fund, you can get tax deduction for that. And a lot of salary men and salary women as well actually buy this a lot every year. So this becomes something that have a lot of money. They can play this to make the ESG scenario work better in Thailand as well. So I found this, we starting to have something, but we have to make it very well. We have to be careful about how we deploy the tax deduction system, and to encourage the fund to really screening and careful in their selection of the investment that they do on their portfolio.
Okay, add something more like why don't we just rely on the voluntary standards that are out there a lot? I would say that because right now it's voluntary and it's, as Poomsiri said, it's quite that there's a large gap, like it's a large area of conditions, of requirements, of guidelines on which the company can rely. So generally, I would not say that Thailand will have like stringent law on standardization of information of ESG disclosure, but I would say that at least we should have some mandatory requirement and setting the accuracy on which the precisement on which standards that can be relied on. It might not be just one set of the standards, but at least make clear that which standards that we are referring to. So it's like we adopt the existing standards, so the foreign investor doesn't have to have more cost to rely on the standards, but at least make it precise for the investor to know that information. And as Poomsiri mentioned, we have ESG fund, and we are paving our way towards what we call green economy, and we are moving towards like ensuring ESG policies is developing. So the ESG fund is one example that we need some metrics, we need some standardization to make sure that the companies and get benefits or get advantages from those mechanisms. They deserve that, not just by saying that they are green. And you know, like saying that you are green has actually not much cost for that, for saying that you are green, if there is no verification or no oversight mechanism. So that's why we say that ESG disclosure must be mandatory, but that is not just one thing, and especially in a country with developing countries like us.
Yeah, so thank you so much. It was really a very insightful presentation. So we've been talking about ESG during this afternoon, and I feel like the discussions are getting more sophisticated and sophisticated. I think that we can continue the Q&A session during the dinner if the presentators agree. But yeah, for the sake of timekeeping, I think it's time to wrap up. And one point that I really liked is that the situation is not really different in Korea as well. The reason because the pressure of doing sustainable disclosure were more likely coming from the international pressure than the domestic demand. So for example, as you know, in EU, they have the non-EU regulation that applies to non-EU companies, which will be applied very soon. And also, if you are in the supply chain of a multinational company, whether you like ESG or not, you need to follow certain guidelines that they have internally and things like that. So there is obviously this kind of international spillover effect on ESG regulation that we have in Asia. But also we need to think about the cost-benefit analysis of doing disclosure. So for example, I own several shares in Samsung Electronics, which is the biggest company in Korea, just for teaching. But the thing is that I don't read their annual reports. I don't read their prospectus. So because I feel like I'm a sophisticated investor because I teach corporate law and capital law. But I don't rely on the disclosure information they are making. I know that there here is all the gurus from all major Asian jurisdictions, and let me know if there's anyone who really read the annual reports and prospectus before purchasing a share. So this shows that the cost-benefit analysis of doing a sustainable disclosure could be really, really an important issue. Yeah, so let me wrap up here, and please give a big applause to the presenter and the commentator. Thank you.